Ramses the Great ruled in the 13th century BC, and by this point the Egyptians had been cutting stone for 1,500 years, and they had it down to an absolute science. But if there was ever a question that science could become art, that is the answer. This temple is in effect a monumental sculpture that demonstrates what is possible when art and engineering combine with just a wee bit of ego.
Ruling for nearly 7 decades, Ramses II was the pharaoh of pharaohs. From childhood, all the hopes for his dynasty rested on him, and he was treated with a reverence usually reserved for the gods themselves. His status as Egypt's golden boy made him the country's most eligible bachelor and husband. He had at least 21 children by the age of 21, and at least 17 wives. Over the course of his life, he would father as many as 110 sons and probably as many daughters.
Why so many children? Well, that is part of his virility. The pharaoh was considered the bull, and a bull is kind of a primal symbol of male sexuality. Ramses' blood is likely to have been just expanded in incredible percentage, so that thousands of years later there would have been hundreds of thousands of people who had some, possibly, the blood of Ramses the Great.
Ramses excelled not only in love, but in war. For centuries, Egypt had been mired in a seesaw struggle for control of ports and trade routes in the Middle East. Ramses' father, Seti, had recently made inroads there, but the region's dominant tribe, the Hittites, remained a formidable foe. Like his father, Ramses would take up arms in an effort to expand Egypt's borders. He would attack the Hittite kingdom in Syria with 20,000 men, the largest known force in Egyptian history.
They had, by this point, acquired chariots, the double bow, a whole slew of other kinds of sort of instruments of warfare. Certainly in the ancient world, they were amongst the greatest warriors.
As formidable as the pharaoh's forces were, the Hittites had even more soldiers. But despite being outnumbered, Ramses fought to a bloody stalemate and returned home a hero. Reliefs were carved to commemorate the pharaoh's bravery on the walls of countless Egyptian edifices, including his great temple at Abu Simbel. Construction on it began around 1269 BC, in the 10th year of Ramses' reign. Its engineers employed a process similar to tomb construction in the Valley of the Kings.
All these colossal sculptures would have been carved by a community of people working together, working all over these colossal pieces. And we know this from representations in the tomb of Rekhmirah, which shows the temple workshops. Sculptors are at work on larger than life-size three-dimensional statuary, showing them working on the face, working on the shoulders, working on the arms, working on the body and the legs. And out of this communal effort, they created a piece of work which has the perfect proportions.
The statues of Ramses outside the Great Temple stand 69 feet tall, making them the largest that had ever been sculpted in Egypt. Inside, an entire temple complex is carved out within one massive rock. The first atrium alone has 8 more towering statues of the pharaoh. Beyond that is a series of other rooms, a second atrium, a sanctuary, and smaller side chambers that may have served as storerooms for sacred offerings. Every facet of the temple's design was meant to send a clear message to all who entered that Ramses the Great was a god among the living.
Ramses II is shown not only worshiping the gods, but worshiping an image of his own deified self. So you have Ramses II as pharaoh, worshiping Ramses II as god, all taking place during the lifetime of Ramses II.
The heart of the temple is its sanctuary, which lies more than 200 feet inside the mountain. Within it are 4 statues of Egypt's mightiest gods: Ptah, the creator; Amun, the supreme god; Ramses, the living god; and Ra-Harakti, the sun god. Twice a year, on the 22nd of February and October, the rays of the rising sun strike the faces of the 3 gods associated with it: Ramses, Ra-Harakti, and Amun. Some Egyptologists ascribe significance to those dates, such as the pharaoh's birthday and his coronation date. Others chalk it up purely to chance.
This is really normal, like, you know, if you look at around your house, any place, the sun will hit a certain place in your house twice a year. That's really a natural thing.
Next door to the great temple stands the one carved out in honor of Ramses' most beloved queen, Nefertari. While the pharaoh could have any woman he laid eyes on, his heart belonged only to her.
Nefertari is absolutely beautiful in the representations that we have of her. She must have been really spectacular, and in fact, there are inscriptions that say that she was the woman by whom the north wind blows.
On her temple's exterior facade, there are 6 statues, 4 of Ramses and 2 of Nefertari, each standing 33 feet tall. This is the oldest temple in Egypt, where the queen statues stand as tall as the kings, underscoring her uncommon significance.
Just as Ramses II is deified in his temple, Nefertari is also deified in her own. Nefertari is actually shown as the goddess Hathor, so she becomes a divinity just like her husband.
During the reign of Ramses the Great, the temples at Abu Simbel stood as an imposing reminder to northern-bound travelers that a powerful empire lay just over the horizon. That empire, nearly 2,000 years in the making, would spend the next 1,000 years in decline.
Within a few centuries of the death of Ramses the Great in 1212 BC, the new kingdom had fallen victim to the same circumstances that had destroyed the previous ones: increasingly weak leadership and economic depression. Over the centuries, a revolving door of foreign conquerors, Nubians, Libyans, Assyrians, Persians, even Alexander the Great and the Greeks took hold of Egypt. Finally, with the suicide of that legendary Cleopatra VII, in marched Octavian Caesar with the legions of Rome, and ancient Egypt was finished. Over time, these temples were buried by the desert sand, lost to history, just like the civilization that built them. But in our time, they have been reborn to stand once again and proudly proclaim the power and ingenuity of the world's first true empire.